you to rise in body or spirit this morning as we get ready for our opening now. Open the window to rest. Open the window now. Open the window to rest. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window, let the dove fly. Jesus locked the doors and the fence is so high. Open the window, let the dove fly. Don't see what you discover on the other side. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window to rest. Open the window now. Open the window to rest. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window, let the dove fly. Oh, the sun comes through the borderline sky. Open the window, let the dove fly. Oh, the border broken in the border on your mind. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window to rest. Open the window now. Open the window to rest. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window, let the dove fly. Promise each other again and again. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the circle, let it wide again. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window to rest. Open the window now. Open the window to rest. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window, let the dove fly.
Good morning. Welcome everybody to Foothills this beautiful morning. Welcome everybody here in the sanctuary. Welcome to everyone online. My name is Gretchen, and alongside Reverend Sean Neil Barron and Reverend Elaine Aaron Tenbrink, who are both out on vacation today, I am one of the ministers, and I'm so glad to be here with you this morning, leading our service with our community minister, Reverend Christopher, who you just heard offering some music today. Always so glad to be leading worship with Christopher. We also, of course, have Julie on piano, as well as, get all the claps. It's always good when we start with a little extra appreciation. Also, we have the amazing, now that you started, you have to keep going, Eleanor Van Dusen from Together with all of you, you deserve some clapping too. We are so grateful for this chance to be together, to remind ourselves and one another that every single person is worthy of love. Every single one, without exception. Yeah. And that we are all in this life together. We want to especially welcome those of you who are new or who are still feeling a little new-ish. A good place to start is our welcome table in the entrance hall. If you haven't stopped by there yet, they're a good place to begin to get some connections, answer your questions, or if you are able to hang around a little bit extra after the service, we would love to have you join us for our new drop-in program we call Inquirers. It's not right after the service. It could be just a minute to grab some coffee or to say hello, and then run over to room 222 over the other wing for conversation, opportunity to learn some more, and also there will be snacks. For everyone who is not new, you can help weave that fabric of belonging in our community simply by being on the lookout for anyone who's sort of looking like they're not sure who to talk to or not sure where to begin after the service, and go up and introduce yourself and begin to make some connections. You might even invite them to join you checking out our Take Action table, where today we have members of our sisterhood who are ready to share with you about their groups for connection and belonging for women aged 50 or better, or about the many wonderful things that are coming up in the next few weeks. There are many I was starting to try to put together a list of all of the things that are coming up. And each Sunday has its own special event, so I'm just going to give you a couple of them now to keep on your radar. Okay, ready? The first one is next Sunday. Next Sunday is our water communion ceremony. So water communion is always that opportunity where we all come together, and often before this year we've needed to rent a space where we could all be in one space together. But not this year. So we would love to have you join us for this opportunity. That's one of our core rituals in Unitarian Universalism we celebrate throughout the year. In this one, you need to bring a small amount of water. Small-ish. I mean, you can bring more, but then we end up with a lot of overflowing, which is its own kind of metaphor. But a small amount of water, and we come together and celebrate what it means to be in a community of diversity, of diverse understandings, and come together in one single mission oriented towards love. So we have a big special service plan next week. We're so excited to be welcoming music director Adam Pod from the First Unitarian Society of Brooklyn. Yeah, he deserves all the claps too. Before I met him, I was so shy to talk to him because I think he's such a rock star. He really is. He's very nice in person, but he is a rock star. So please come join us. Adam and Sophia will be back, as well as we'll have a lot of singers and music. So we hope to fill this space, maybe even have a little overflow out there. It'll feel really good to all be together. The following week, though, we have another opportunity to gather in community as we switch to our two-service schedule. This is why I want to make sure it's on your radar, because you're already going to start to have to think, okay, what time are the services going to be on the 18th? I'll remind you again next week. Any guesses? 9. Oh, you're so good. 9 and 11. All right, great. So the following week you will pick a service, or you can come to both. We do. It's actually very fun to come to both. You get to see all the differences. So 9 and 11, and Adam and Sophia will both be back on that day, so we have a lot of special opportunities for music and celebration on that day, as well as to kick off a new series, what we're calling What Our World Needs Now. Wait and find out. All right, that's probably enough for now. We'll have a little information. Please check out the table after the service. I lost track in my script. For those of you who were here last Sunday, I need to break it to you now that this service does not culminate in a joyous musical exploration of masculinity in the 21st century. If you missed it, this is a photo of our I'm Just Ken production from last week. You can find it on the website if you missed it, because it was glorious. That was about our service of breaking free from restrictive societal and religious expectations that no longer fit. Today's service, does not have a repeat performance of that, but we are continuing to explore that journey of claiming our own agency and the power of choice, that is informed choice when it comes to our faith. This is all part of the series we're continuing. We call it Faith in Pieces, about the journey of deconstruction. Let's turn to our series video as we begin our service together.
All things that no longer serve me. I release all things that no
presenting with a faith that walks on sun or beautiful fruits, with resilience held dynamically as truth continues to be revealed, truth within ourselves, truth across all of life, that is a willingness to be wrong and admit, to change and to sense our complexity and welcome contradiction, to claim this must be as the center of life, trusting that out of the shattering dawn, a new mosaic of meaning shimmers in the light.
Release all things that no longer serve me. I release all things.
Good morning. My name is Augustus Herrera. Before last November, I had never even heard of Unitarian Universalism. I'd always had a profound sense of the divine, and I engaged with people from many kinds of faith traditions, but I didn't have a spiritual home. I always felt like an outsider. My unruly and complicated beliefs set me apart, and I refused to reduce my reality to a compromise. I had accepted my place as an observer, assuming that I would never fully belong. That is, until I found Foothills. I recently became a member, and as part of that process, I was asked the question, why are you feeling called to be a member of Foothills Unitarian? I thought about it for a while, and eventually came up with this answer. We live in a world where too many people are lost. Too many feel bankrupt of community, unworthy of unconditional love, estranged from their inner spirits, and alone in their pursuit of truth. Many religious organizations attempt to fix these problems, but in their rigidity, only further marginalize those who need them most. Many secular organizations also try, but do not provide the spiritual deepening that unifies and comforts us so. Foothills is one of those rare places where we can bring our whole selves and share in the energy which comprises us. I grew up in a Christian family, but I never encountered a spiritual home which so truly embodied that often repeated motto, "Come as you are." Before finding this place, I was like a tuft of dandelion fluff carrying a single seed. I was at the mercy of the wind and every passing finch. There were good times and there were bad times, but I held a barricade alone. It doesn't really matter whether you put all your eggs in one basket when you have to carry all the baskets yourself. I had some friends and family, but individual personal relationships do not provide the same security as community. At Foothills, I feel part of something larger than myself. I feel embraced and protected, and when I fall in life, as we all do sometimes, there will be many outstretched hands to pull me back up. What we do here is something so fundamental and so necessary. We are love. We are human. There is no container we must fit inside of, which we have to carve off pieces of ourselves to conform to. There are no implications of hierarchical worth that favor only the fortunate and yet no one at all. There is no expectation of righteous shame. There is no talk of perfection. The road home has no tolls. This community makes people feel loved and rejects the seeds of shame. Damn all concerns about convenience and image. Damn any claims of holy retribution, and damn the deployment of fear and anger. At Foothills, we help others. We show them that they are already holy and unconditionally worthy. That is the highest good. That is the work I want to be a part of. Each week, in the affirmation of our covenant, we confirm our intentions to pursue that highest good. As we light our chalice, I invite you to share in the words of our covenant, which begin with the word love. Love is the spirit of the Spirit, and faith is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak the truth in love, and to love one another. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Sophia Lyon-Fogg. She looks a little bit serious, don't you think? But also like a very nice grandmother. Sophia is one of our Unitarian Universalist ancestors. She was an author and a teacher, and she led a revolution in Unitarian Universalist religious education. Sophia had this radical new idea that children are by their very nature spiritual beings, and they have the power and the agency to make meaning in the world around them. Sophia believed that when kids learn by doing, through their own experiences, it helps them to develop their own ideas about the big questions in life, about religion and spirituality. Instead of telling children what they ought to believe, Fogg encouraged kids to ponder for themselves the mysteries of the universe and human destiny. She believed that when we expose children to the stories and myths and legends of other cultures, to the discoveries of science, and to the wonder and beauty of the world around them, that they will develop their own unique sense of the sacred. Her legacy has been passed down to us, to all of our Unitarian Universalist children. Her legacy continues and includes that idea that our Unitarian Universalist faith is a consensual faith. That word consensual has the word consent in it. Have you heard that word before? Yeah? Consent means that we get to decide what feels right for each of us, what happens to our bodies, and also what ideas and beliefs feel right for us. We each get to choose what's true and right for each of us. So this past week, we had a lot of fun. We had our chalice camp here at Foothills. We had 80 children and youth here all week celebrating in our camp. It's one of my very favorite special weeks of the year because I get to hang out with our amazing Foothills kids and our youth in middle and high school who serve as camp counselors. I get to watch them live out their Unitarian Universalist faith in real time as they learn and play together. Earlier this summer, at our Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, thousands of Unitarian Universalists voted decisively to approve a new statement of values and beliefs for Unitarian Universalists. And our camp theme this year focused on those values. Now, I have a special friend who helped me to teach the kids about these 6 values at camp, and I think they just... May I introduce to you Jet Pig. So my friend Jet Pig and I want to share a sampling. Oh, not yet. First, Jet Pig is going to share with you about those values that we learned about at camp.
I'm so excited to teach you about these things that matter so much to us. And I wonder if I have any helpers out here. Are there any kids who were at camp last week who are here right now? I see a few of you. So if your neighbors aren't quite following along, you can be ready to be their leaders, because you know what's up. The first question I have for all of you gathered here today, my good friends, is what does the J in JetPig stand for? Do any of my camper friends remember? Shout it out really big. Justice!
justice! Justice working to make things fair and right for everyone in the world. Next in my name is letter E. What does my E stand for? Equity! Helping everyone have what they need and remembering that we don't all need the same things. What about my letter T? Anyone know? I hear it. Transformation. We're always growing and changing and learning new things and adapting to the world around us as it changes. What about letter P in JetPig? I heard a small voice say a big word. Pluralism. Celebrating our differences and making a space in our hearts and our communities for all of those differences to be together. What about my I? Interdependence! We have some experts in this room that know that we all need each other, and we all depend on each other, and we all affect one another. We're almost there. What about my letter G? Anyone remember? There it is, generosity. Woo! We have hearts ready to give, and we know that we all have seasons of giving and receiving, and we come from a spirit of abundance as we live out our values in the world. And what is at the center of all of those values, my friends? Love! Love is at the center. Wonderful. Thank you, JetPig. Anytime, Eleanor. So, if you want to learn more about those values, just ask a child, because they know. JetPig. It's a fabulous acronym for us. So, my friend JetPig and I, we want to share a sampling of all of the goodness that happened at our Chalice Camp last week, and we have a video for you. Hit it. You're going to love it. at summer camp.
And in celebration of our consensual faith, where each of us gets to choose what we believe and live out our values with love at the center.
Let's sing together. Let's.
Hope ever, faith ever, strengthening you. Life ever, breath ever, nourishing you. Everywhere you go, may you always be home. Everyone you meet, be messengers of peace.
It's time for our kids to head over to their small group. So come on forward, kids. Come right up here in front of the stage. Here they come. All right. And as they make their way out here, I'm going to invite our adults to rise and form arches of blessing with your arms over the aisle. Under there. Jeff.
Hope ever, faith ever, strengthening you. Life ever, breath ever, nourishing you. And everywhere you go, may you always be home. And everyone you meet, be messengers of peace. Let your light shine through, and your heart ever be true. With grace and gratitude, walk in wisdom, sharing all that's good. Hope ever, joy ever, following you. Life ever, love ever, radiating through. May you always be home, and everyone you meet, be messengers of peace.
I want to especially appreciate that Lauren just kept the pig nose on the whole time. Yeah, it looks like he has let it go now, but that was a real commitment to the jet pig. Let's take a deep breath together. Love is the spirit of this church, and it is in this spirit that we promise to each other to journey together through all of the tangled blessings. That is, that joys and sorrows and the ways that they arrive all at once in this life, all mixed up. This morning we are holding close that tangled blessing as we both celebrate the life and also mourn the loss of longtime Foothills member Lois Martin. Yeah, some of you longtime members know exactly what a force Lois was. She died on July 27th at age 100. She has not been in church the last few years. She had a lot of hearing loss, so she just wasn't able to fully participate. And what Lois really liked to do was participate. But she was a force for this community, in this community for decades, and we are all blessed, whether we knew her or not, by the marks she left on this place. We also are holding in love and healing, continued healing to John Bryant this morning, who was in an accident in his beloved RV. We're grateful that he did not sustain. He's here this morning. We're so glad it wasn't more serious, and we hope the healing continues. We're also holding in our hearts Emily Burton this morning as she mourns the loss of her beloved canine companion of 14 years, Charlie. And Emily is also very near the fire zone, so that was an especially hard week for her. Our love is also with Becky Wagner, who evacuated from Sunrise Ranch on Monday due to the fires, and with all those who have evacuated and all who are watching carefully and waiting. We are feeling especially grateful this morning for the firefighters on the front lines, working so hard to contain the blazes, smoke. We grieve the loss of life in this land that we love, for the animals and the plants, for trees, for the air and our skies. We pray for containment and for just the right amount of rain. Beyond these joys and sorrows I named aloud, let us honor the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, yet live in the silence of our hearts. The stories of heartache, or hope, beauty, and loss. May all of these stories and each of us feel the compassion embodied here in this community. For all those places that need forgiveness, may forgiveness be given and received. For the grief we carry, may we find healing and hope. For division in our nation, in our families, in our lives. For violence of all kinds, and for fear which keeps us isolated and reactive. For the ways we fail each other and ourselves. In each of these, may we be restored to a new wholeness and trust, held by a unifying and ultimate love. And for the many blessings of our lives, the beauty we create and receive in the everyday, may our hearts be overcome with gratitude. As we breathe together, let us feel the ways that we are all connected in this one life, ultimately indivisible in spirit and in the web of life. Let us remember our promise to practice compassion and understanding and service, and to journey together in partnership with the power of courageous love. Amen, and may it be so.
Earth, wind, water.
try a responsive reading this morning. That means I'm going to say some words, and then you say some words back to me. Don't worry, I've given you a script. So your part is in italics. Generally, the way it works is I have a slide, and then you have a slide. This is a reading called I Call That Church Free. It is in our hymnal, but I went back to the source and pulled out a few other pieces, so we're going to need to use the slides. But in case you wondered, it is number, I didn't write the number down. I'm not going to tell you. It's in the back of the hymnal. All right, let us begin together with this reading by James Luther Adams. It begins with me. I call that church free, which enters into covenant with the ground of freedom, that sustaining, judging, transforming power not made with human hands. Thank you. Families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority. I call that church free, which in covenant brings the individual into a caring, trusting fellowship that protects and nourishes their integrity and spiritual freedom. Is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, prophethood calling for liberation for all, priesthood offering a ministry of freedom. I call that church free, which liberates from bondage and which promotes the continuing reformation of its own and other institutions. It protests against routine conformity or thoughtless nonconformity that leads to deformity of mind, heart, and community. I call that church free, which in charity promotes freedom and fellowship, seeking unity in diversity. This unity is a potential gift sought through devotion to the transforming power of creative interchange in generous dialogue. I call that church free, which responds in responsibility to the Spirit that bloweth where it listeth. It invites and engenders liberation from repression and exploitation, whether of nation or economic system, of race or sex or class. It bursts through rigid, cramping inheritance, giving rise to new language, to new forms of cooperation, to new and broader fellowship. The Church of the Spirit is a pilgrim church on adventure. I call that church free, which earns and creates a tradition binding together past, present, and future in a living tether, in a continuing covenant and identity, bringing forth treasures both old and new. It is open to insight and conscience from every source. But the church is never wholly free. It tolerates injustice, special privilege, and indifference to suffering, as though it were not accountable to a tribunal higher than the world's. In the midst of this unfreedom, the congregation comes together to adore that which is holy, to confess its own brokenness, and to renew the covenant. I call that church free, which does not cringe in despair, but casting off fear, is lured by the divine persuasion to respond in hope to the light that has shone and that still shines in the darkness. I decided on responsive, not just because it is responsive in the hymnal, but because James Luther Adams is quite dense. So try to help us all follow along on that reading from 1975. Yes, 1975. Just a few years ago. Before there was tragedy, there was love. It was 1977, so just a few years after James Luther Adams first declared his vision for a free church. A vision that in some ways the people who gathered at the People's Temple in San Francisco would find deep resonance with. They were a church based most of all in love, after all, and in a vision for a free and equal society, a multiracial culture. They hoped to build a radically new world based on this vision and these values. Together, they offered social and medical programs for people in need, including regular meals, drug rehab, legal services. They made a huge impact in their community, not just for the people who received the services, but for the members themselves, many of whom were longing for their lives to have meaning and make a difference. It was hard to maintain this vision, though, their charismatic minister said, in the midst of a world that wanted the opposite. And so they left. They decided to actually build a new society in the South American country of Guyana, a utopian commune, the People's Temple Agricultural Project, or what most people, most of you probably, and the history books since, called Jonestown, after its leader, Jim Jones. The story of what happened within the settlement, within a year, has since so captured our collective imaginations, as in our collective horror, that the phrase, "drink the Kool-Aid," which started in reference to their ending, is still, nearly 5 decades later, shorthand for people being deceived into madness or manipulated into their own destruction. The actual story, however, is probably worse than most of us conjure up when we hear that phrase, "drink the Kool-Aid." And so I'm going to give you an option now to plug your ears or actively check out if you just can't take in one more tragedy this week. Okay? Because the way that it went is that Jones convinced his followers that they were about to be tortured or attacked, and so the best course of action would be to willingly take a concoction of cyanide and fruit juice. Not only did they agree, but they started by giving the mixture to their children. So that by the end, more than 900 people died that day, and over a third of them were children. How is it that their vision of love, their community of meaning and hope, could end there? How do people with goodwill and best intentions become the story of America's greatest mass tragedy of the 20th century? Now, Jonestown is obviously a very extreme example. But not too far from that extreme, we might turn to more recent stories of religious cults like Heaven's Gate. Do you remember that one in the 90s? Or more recently, Mother God. Anybody watch that documentary? What about Going Clear? Would we include the story of Scientology in this list of cult documentaries? Stories? Or how about Shiny Happy People, which is about the Duggar family, that's of the 19 Kids and Counting fame, but really was about the Christian fundamentalist group Basic Life Principles, or IBLP. These religious movements have not ended in suicide or homicide, thankfully, but there is still plenty of tragedy across all of these stories. Plenty of what, from this vantage point, looks like manipulation and deceit. Like a lot of people who drink the Kool-Aid. The line between being manipulated and being genuinely persuaded to choose a given path can get fuzzy, especially when it comes to religion. Religion opens us up in different ways. And it has a greater capacity to control and to convince, which, let's be honest, is because of God. We should blame God, not just because the idea of God has been used as a weapon against so many, that too, but more because of the longing that all humans have within us and that we bring into religious community, whether we mean to or not. I call this longing the longing for God. By which I do not mean to imply a required or automatic theism. I just mean to use the word God as shorthand for a much bigger concept, what I call the human longing to be known and held and loved existentially, transcendently, infinitely, unconditionally. A fundamentally human desire for our individual lives and life itself to have some greater purpose, some deeper meaning. We all have this longing. We all bring it with us when we come into religious community, even Unitarian Universalist religious community. But then, right in the middle of this longing, we also hold whatever is going on for us in our lives, personally. Someone we love is ill, or who has died. We are falling in love, or we're grieving a lost love. We are worrying for our children or our grandchildren. We're bursting with pride and gratitude. We have a new job, or we wish we did. We have been helped by people in ways we can't believe, or we are caught in loneliness and can't see our way out. We are scared about the state of the world, about an upcoming election, about fires coming in too close. We are angry that the fires are part of a new reality of living on this earth. We are not just afraid and angry, we are despairing, and also we are in awe at the beauty around us, the rivers, the trees, the hawk, the deer, all of those things Christopher's saying about, and also we ache for the loss of this beauty, these lives, our lives, and we rejoice. What are you carrying in your heart that I haven't named? So many stories we carry. Every time. Every time we come through the doors on Sunday, every time I see your faces, I assume that you are holding some or all of these things, and so much more that I can't even begin to imagine. It's a practice I encourage, actually, that when you say good morning and smile at each other on Sundays, you just try to remember that the person you're greeting is holding all of this. And it's all mixed up somehow with that longing for God, however you would name it. And what's especially complicated in churches is that each of us may or may not be aware of any of this at any given time. And we might even actively deny it. Church is funny that way, mostly because humans are funny that way and fascinating. But it is this combination, that longing, meeting up with our personal stories that we bring here, even if we don't realize it, that makes us in religious community uniquely vulnerable. Vulnerable to manipulation and deceit, vulnerable to betrayals of trust, especially by those who are in positions of power, religious professionals, of course, but even from our fellow members. We are vulnerable to one another, vulnerable to ourselves, vulnerable to the very hope we are holding. It's why a lot of us arrive not with all these stories and longing right out on our sleeves, but with all of it carefully and thoroughly tucked away, well protected, deep inside our best armor, our best smiles, our deflecting gaze, our hyper-rationalism, or our skepticism, cynicism, and doubt, and of course, our deep commitment to keeping the talk small, so as to not end up revealing too much. All the while trying to figure out through squinted eyes and crossed arm, like one newcomer asked me recently, "What's the catch?" wouldn't believe how many newcomers come into newcomer conversations, and they're like, yeah, but what's the catch? It's an anxiety that people hold, and people in liberal religion have held, sometimes still hold, even after being here for years. What's the catch? It's a skepticism that actually comes from a deep respect for and awareness of the vulnerability we carry in religious community, and a desire to protect each of us, to protect ourselves. And it is also, of course, an anxiety and skepticism that can keep us caught in a community so concerned about being free from deceit or free from manipulation that we refuse in turn to let this place gain too much power or too much meaning, matter too much to the world or to us, else we misuse it or abuse it. As Unitarian Universalist theologian Rebecca Parker writes, many liberals, consciously or not, seem to prefer their religious institutions remain weak, underfunded, or distracted by endless attention to process checks on the exercise of power. It's understandable. And of course, it is also the exact way to ensure we never meet the longing we all arrive here seeking. It's understandable. And also, it is not morally neutral. When we refuse to pick up the power that we could have, when we hold ourselves back from our potential for meaning, for impact, to paraphrase Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, neutrality in any community helps the oppressor, never the victim. Returning from Germany in the late 1930s, having witnessed the rise of Hitler and the influence of fascism, Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams, he of all those words we just read together, he was urgently aware of this tension in liberal religion because he had seen firsthand the anemic response of the liberal church in Europe and its incapacity and its unwillingness to resist the Nazis with any sustained commitment. He wondered, as he returned, if fascism came to the United States, if our expression of liberal religion would do any better. Or would we be so caught in a desire to protect our own freedom from dogma, freedom from control, freedom from manipulation, that we would not be willing or able to be free for something, free for someone, free for a world where we all would be free. These urgent questions in turn led JLA, that's what people call him, James Luther Adams JLA, to reclaim a long-lost concept at the heart of liberal religion, which is the theological understanding and practice of covenant. Unitarian Universalism is a covenantal religion. The heart of our faith is the practice and theology of covenant. Now, the idea of covenant has been with us since our formal beginnings in the 18th and 19th centuries, as our forebears imagined a way of being religious where we could all be, like Augustus, and have unruly and complicated beliefs, and yet still be bound together in community. Covenant was also our way of doing church, where those who would gather together simply by way of their promising in the spirit of mutual love that promising would grant them direct access to wisdom and truth and the spirit of life itself without any need for any bishops or hierarchy at all. Covenant is how we as Unitarian Universalists bind ourselves in relationship. That's the root of the word religion, by the way. Religio, to bind together. So we are bound in our religion by the promises we make to each other and to the spirit of life. To be a covenantal church is different than creedal churches who are bound up together by their shared beliefs, their creed. I say that JLA reclaimed the practice of covenant because for a long while, we, Unitarian Universalists, lost track of the meaning and power of covenant because we became overly focused on our individual freedom and autonomy. That is, our desire to protect ourselves and one another. So we focus on ensuring our freedom from more than what we would be free for. JLA reminded us that covenant is the way that we can get both. So in the covenant, people, we make promises to each other, but also we make promises with something greater. As JLA puts it in our reading, the ground of freedom. Might be one way to say it. That sustaining, assessing, transforming power, not made with human hands, which can be conceived of theistically or atheistically. This acknowledgement of partnership with something greater than the individual people making the promises is a way of acknowledging we did not make ourselves. We are bound up in promises that precede us and that will outlast us. And by our faith, we have a duty to this greater picture that is the thread of life. The promises we make in a covenant are about love and loyalty and trust. So that when a covenant is broken, it is a betrayal of trust, not some gotcha game of contractual legalism, or you broke a rule. That is, to repair a covenant is to attempt to heal a betrayal and rebuild the trust. To make this more personal and tangible, something that might apply in many of your lives, a marriage is a covenantal relationship. When someone breaks a promise in a marriage, the particular broken promise may sting, but the real injury is to the trust in the relationship. Whether or not that trust can be fully rebuilt is never a given, but only if the only reparation is treated like some single individual rule break, then the covenant itself would never fully be repaired. But despite how all that might sound, the fact that we will fall short in our covenantal relationships is a given, as the promises of a covenant represent our highest ideals and our most important commitments, which means built into our covenantal faith are practices of repentance, repair, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Now, importantly, for JLA's concerns and for our own, this covenant that we have is not neutral. The covenant has a direction, what we might name as the direction of courageous love, by which we would mean the goodness and healing and transformation that we may experience within our covenant is not ultimately for us. We are not free for ourselves, at least not alone. All this goodness, this freedom, is for a greater whole. The systems and society around us, the world, our lives, the love at the center of our covenant requires us to heal across the whole interdependent web. It requires us to heal injustice and inequality everywhere. And in our covenant, we are accountable not just to one another, but to all of those impacted by the inequality that remains. Which means that the ultimate promises of a covenant are a commitment to a world where we are all free. Which is why when newcomers ask me if there's a catch, I always say yes. We are not neutral here. Our catch is love, you might say, courageous love. Courageous love is the direction we're headed. The promise we invite you to be a part of if you choose, and if you keep choosing. We are, after all, as a covenantal faith, powered by consent. Explicit, informed, and ongoing consent. We teach consent most explicitly in our sexuality education classes, we call OWL, which we offer at various ages across the lifespan. We start at pre-K, which is where our lessons about consent begin. We teach consent and agency and trust. We teach kids to trust themselves, to trust their own no and their own yes, and we teach kids to seek and respect each other's consent or lack thereof. We also teach about bodies, that is the real names for body parts. And the combination of teaching about consent alongside actual facts is the proven best way to protect our kids in their vulnerability from a betrayal of trust. This is the same principle that we rely on across the whole of our faith to protect all of us in our vulnerability and also in our vision. Perpetual, explicit, and informed consent is foundational to covenant, as there can be no coercion in covenant. If there's coercion, it's not a covenant. Covenant is built on perpetual free choice by the promise makers. And it is the free choice itself, the fact that we actively consent to keep promising, to keep showing up, to stay in relationship and move in the direction of love, to let ourselves commit to this much possibility. The freedom itself is profoundly transformational and healing. And sometimes I look around at all of the goodness, this blessing, all of the changes that happen. They happen in communities slowly and then suddenly like everywhere. The blessing we have been and we can be for our wider community. And then the fact that all of this has been done for decades, freely, without coercion, people just choosing, without the threat of hell or any other particular threat of punishment or guilt or shame. People just choose freely. That we are free for one another and for our world. This is what keeps giving me hope. The world we live in today presses upon us just as urgently as James Luther Adams felt in that earlier age, maybe even more so. And so we must not be afraid to claim the power of our faith, its potential to change us and also change the world around us. In our covenant, may we practice our perpetual and resilient freedom that faithfully fulfills our commitment to building a world where we are all free. May it be so, and amen.
There is a movement. There is a higher sound. There is a hollow glaring on the ground. There is a home. The soul, slow and sweet, and it is made for you and so. Of your feet. Oh, oh, I can hear the ancestors singing. Oh, oh, calling every moment into life. Oh, the breathing rain, breathe us leaving. There's nothing left to do but shine. 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 There is light. So many guiding hands. There is a joy springing up from the land. Oh, there is a home. outside your chest, there is a home. It's so slow and sweet, and it is made for you and soul of your feet.
That feeling of being at home that Christopher is singing about is something we all deserve, and it's a feeling we hope we're offering each other every time we gather. But it's also something that we create for our wider community in all kinds of ways, including each year around this time as we help to fund and literally build a home for a family in our community. We are a part of a whole network of faith communities who've made a commitment to building at least one home every year through our volunteer hours and, even more importantly, through our financial support in a project called the Common Ground Faith Build. This year, Mom Crystal and her son, who we last year built a home for, are getting very close to be able to move in. They are counting on us to keep doing our part. So everything you place in the basket or donate by texting SHARE plus the amount to the number on the screen will be shared equally with our partners at Habitat for Humanity and our Interfaith Build this effort of creating home for one another and to support our mission to unleash courageous love in northern Colorado and far beyond. We will now gratefully receive your offering.
It's been a long, lonely time since I had a dime on my own. Since I gave it all away, never will it stay to weep and moan. Weep and moan. I am older now than you were back then. There can be no doubt you were not mine. That was just a child in me, crying to the man.
move to the end of our service, it comes to that time that we always set aside for a practice of gratefulness. I have a couple of things I want to just invite our gratitude for as we begin. First of all, we sent out an email earlier this week inviting people to respond with offers of help in case they were needed, homes or goods or things as people needed to evacuate. We had over 60 responses within a few hours. Pretty amazing to see. Just come, stay in my home. One after another, up to 60 in this community. So it just makes me feel very grateful. And so far, grateful that we haven't needed to call on any of those. I also want to offer gratitude for those who've been gathering for the last, I think it's about 6 weeks now, in our Unity Hall to write letters of encouragement to those in other states. I think we have a couple of states. Where's Greta? North Carolina, I think, is one. Anyway, Michigan, Georgia, thank you, Minnesota. Okay, all of those states are impressive, but the real impressive number I want to offer is that so far they've written 1,200 letters. So you too can join in, come before the service next week. Just write a letter encouraging someone out there, a voter, to get out there and vote in this year's election. So let's take a big, deep breath, feeling gratitude for whatever might be showing up in your life, whoever might be showing up in your life. It's helping you feel free, not just from, but also for. Something that's connecting you to that bigger picture, someone that's reminding you how to keep going. And just feel a sense of gratitude. It's the gratitude that can keep us going through all of life, whatever life might bring. So just stay connected to that place, that thank you. And when you have that feeling of gratitude in your heart, I invite you to inspire you to rise in body and spirit for one last song. Let's sing together one of our favorites. the ultimate group project. We need each other, so may we continue to meet one another in that deeper longing to be known and seen and held, and keep working in the direction of love. Our worship time is over. Our service just begins. Go in peace and in love. Amen.